Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, as a cat also licking himself right behind Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and it's October. It is the month of Halloween. It is the season to be spooky, as I've been saying, which means we do a bunch of extra episodes we are working our way through. And this was actually, this movie we're doing in this episode is actually a kind of last minute addition, because a week ago, I don't think we knew this movie existed. This is just Netflix were like, hey, we've got an original movie that's kind of Halloween-y. No, it's more of a horror comedy, arguably, but still, we can do those here. And, so have a look at this. Now, admittedly, when you tell me a film is by McG, I typically lose interest. He's the guy who did Terminator Salvation.
Oh, okay.
I can't say I particularly love the Charlie's Angels movies. And other things he's done, which I cannot remember off the top of my head. But he's not someone I'd get excited about.
Yeah, the only thing I knew him from is I think he's done a lot of Supernatural, which I enjoyed.
He did the pilot, I think. I don't know if he did more than that, but yeah, he was involved.
Well, I saw his name in the credits a lot, so I mean, maybe just a producer. Maybe he didn't do that much, but...
Yeah, I think because he was there at the start, he just gets an executive producer credit, like, forever.
All right. Yeah, that's funny though, because that's the only thing I really know him from. So when I hear his name, I'm kind of like, it's not something I get excited for, but I'm also don't have like a kind of thing for it.
Well, that's exactly the feeling I have. I'm like, well, that's kind of what I feel when I hear McG. But the trailer is kind of fun, had potential. So we're going to talk about The Babysitter, which is Netflix's original film, came out on Friday the 13th. In October. Of course, we actually did Friday the 13th for Friday the 13th, because that makes more sense to us, but here we are a couple of days later doing The Babysitter. So what is the plot of The Babysitter? And obviously we'll start spoiler free, we'll warn you before we go into spoilers, as per usual. But the plot of The Babysitter is that we have a 12-year-old main character, whose character's name is Cole. Yeah, C. I was thinking C, because they keep calling each other B and C. But we have Cole, who's 12 years old, who's a little too old for a babysitter, but he has one anyway. And he has this very attractive babysitter named B, that's her name. And they have a very strong relationship. He's a bit of a dweeb, he's very kind of timid, he gets a little bit bullied at school, he's very scared of everything. He's kind of your typical... it has this kind of made in the 1980s kind of vibe to it. We've got this dweeby little main character, who you assume by the end of the movie will find strength and not be as much of a dweeb. But him and the babysitter have a really good relationship. Like, she like, treats him with respect, and they have a lot of running jokes, and they seem to be good friends, and she gets, it's not just like, oh, I need to babysit this annoying kid. She seems to get on with him really well. Of course, he decides to stay up and see what happens after he goes to sleep one night when she's babysitting, thinking that she might have a boy over, and lo and behold, she murders someone in his house. There is something evil afoot going on, and it kind of turns into a demented version of Home Alone with lots of violence and death. So that is the premise of The Babysitter, to not give anything else away. So I guess I'll ask the question. Tim, did you enjoy The Babysitter?
Oh yeah, absolutely loved it. I didn't know anything going into it. I didn't even watch the trailer. But I just knew that you had mentioned it, and you're like, oh, this is something that we're probably gonna do. And then as I was watching it...
So question actually then, since you didn't even see the trailer, right? Yeah. Obviously I've said to you, we're doing it for Scream, so you're assuming there's going to be a horror thing that happens eventually. Yeah. But for the first 20 minutes, were you just sitting thinking, well, where's the horror? What's happening? Like, movie about a babysitter and a kid. What's going on?
No, definitely, because the beginning is very entertaining, and it's like, oh, I like this kid, and the characters are all pretty funny. It's very stylized, almost to the point where I think at times is a little too much. Like, I could probably dial back with some of the, effects and stuff in terms of... It has
a lot of captions, it'll come up with big fancy captions to introduce each character, which I actually kind of like that. There was one or two where it went a little bit too far, when it would react to someone finding a weapon or something, to be like, oh, hell yeah, on the screen. Things like, okay, right, I get it, calm down. But
but then... Yeah, I was thinking probably 20, 30-ish minutes in, like, oh, this is good, but where's the horror element? And then, boom, it hits you. And then once it hits you, it's kind of like a nonstop, like...
I almost wish I didn't know this was a horror, because obviously you were expecting something, but were you expecting it? I mean, I won't say what it is, even though it was in the trailer, but we'll keep it just in case you've not seen the trailer, because I feel like the trailer does spoil far too much. If you're interested in this movie, I would say don't watch the trailer. I'd say just watch the flick. It's on Netflix, so it's not like you have to go hunting for it. So just, watch it. But like, did you see it coming at the moment it came? Like, were you expecting, or at least maybe you saw it coming because it felt like it was building to something, but were you expecting the exact thing that happened when the first violent incident occurred?
No, not exactly. I did think that, like, I thought something was going to happen to that individual, but I thought maybe it might even be something crazier, like, that some of the other characters might not even be like humans or something that, I don't think, spoiler alert, there's no aliens or vampires in this, but
what a weird spoiler alert. Like, just spoilers, there's no aliens or vampires in this.
But because I was expecting like some horror element or something, I was like, oh, I wonder if it's gonna be, I don't know, something like that. But I was pleasantly surprised when I was like, oh, okay, this is what they're going for. And then, once you get it, you're kind of right on board for it.
Yeah, it's very self-aware. It's constantly making fun of its tropes and what it's doing from other things. But I think I liked it a lot. If that's not clear, I had a blast with it. And I think that feeling that it's made in the 80s, and you've got this thing where it is this story about this kid fighting back against teenagers, and it's like ultra violent. It really feels like if it wasn't for the phones and maybe the haircuts, like this could have easily just been a movie from the 80s.
Oh, sure.
It really has that feel to it. And one thing I want to commend about the script is actually that everything's very well set up and paid off. Like everything, like, at the start of the movie, it sets up all these different things about the kid, and almost every single one of them in some way pays off later on. He's scared of X thing, but at the end of the movie, he does X thing. He can't do this thing, but at the end of the movie, he will do said thing. Like, there's just all of these things. There's like quite a few of those. And then there's a lot of Chekhov gun kind of moments where, they've set up, there's a knife there. They've set up, there's a, not a gun, but like, like the idea of like setting up all these different things in the story that they come into play at some point. Even in some ways it's small, in some ways it's big, but everything felt like it was paying off and what was set up earlier on. So it felt like a very fleshed out script in that sense, which is almost because it's a very light and breezy. It's 90 minutes. It goes in super fast. The gore and the violence is fantastic, which I was not expecting to be really into this as a gore movie, but there was, things going through people's necks, there was blood splurting out everywhere, there was all sorts of shenanigans. Some of it really over the top as well, so it really had fun with all its carnage as it was going.
Yeah, definitely, and it feels very well earned. By the end of the movie, you just kind of had like a smile on my face going like, oh, hey, like, that actually comes back, or oh, that meant something. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I really dug like all the characters. Like the main character is very I'm trying to think of what the word is. I guess likable is like a little too kind of light, but I don't know. I like that he was, like you said, like, he's a dweeby nerdy kid, but it didn't really feel like too over the top, like it didn't feel like he was unrealistically like this Hollywood nerd archetype, like he like I don't know, there's a level of like believability to him that I could feel with.
He's a very kind of down to earth, but he's not like absurdly annoying. Like, I think I was worried going into this movie, having seen the trailer, that some of the characters would be so over the top that they were annoying. Him in particular, but he's actually not. He's kind of the heart of the movie, and early on when he's like scared of doing things, like, I mean, it's a little bit thin at first, but as you keep watching, and as he's talking about like, the babysitter stuff, oh yeah, people make fun of me for having a babysitter until they see her, and then it turns into jealousy. So like, it feels like as much as he's a bit of a dweeb, he doesn't, and he is a bit innocent, like he doesn't know what an orgy is at one point, and he has to Google orgy, which that felt a bit far-fetched to me for a 12-year-old kid. It's like, you know what orgy is, come on. But otherwise, like, he is catching glances of things, he is being like, he's But then again, part of the point of the movie is he is kind of a little bit young for his age, and he kind of overcomes that throughout.
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, of course, he is far too old for a 12-year-old. That any other 12-year-old is far too young compared to him now, given what he's been through, the shit he's seen. And
then and then all the bad guys were kind of over the top, but I felt like it worked. Like their like craziness kind of I don't know, just gave like a nice little balance in the situation. And then
a bunch of all the teenage characters were great. Robbie Amell, who funny enough was in a Netflix original movie last year. He's Stephen Amell's brother from Arrow. In case you're wondering who he is. He was also half of Firestorm on Legends of Tomorrow. But he's pretty good in this. Like, there's a running gag where he's like shirtless, and the kid keeps asking, "Why is he shirtless? Like, what?" And that's like a sort of running thing, and he's pretty funny. There's the cheerleader character. There's the sort of more kind of, I don't know, gothy Asian girl, I guess, who
artsy,
was
kinda.
Yeah, she was in the Pitch Perfect movies. That's because I knew her face from something as well. I'm like, what's she been in? By the way, the main the babysitter herself, B, she was in Ash vs Evil Dead season 1.
Oh,
so
okay.
So there was a lot of faces in this. That like the mum as well. She was in the Iron Man movies, the first couple.
Oh yeah.
She was like the reporter in those. Like, there was a lot of faces popping up throughout. I was like, okay, I know them from somewhere else. And
of course, the dad is Ken Marino, who, you know, if you're a comedy nerd, you recognize him from like a bunch of different stuff. But
obviously he's one though where I recognized him and went, oh, he's just him. Like, I know him. Whereas everyone else, it was like, I know you all from one thing particularly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just know your face from one thing. Whereas him, it's like, okay, I just know who that is because he's all over the place.
And I liked that. I felt like there was real danger in this. Like, you know, the Home Alone movies, you know, they're fun, you know, kid movies or whatever, but you never really feel like that there's a possibility that the, you know, crooks are gonna catch him and, you know, do some type of harm to him.
I don't know if do you think you feel that in this? Did you actually feel that there was a chance that Cole might get killed?
Not that he would get killed, but I did think there was a chance that he could get hurt, and that if they caught him, that they definitely would want to kill him. But, you know, and I would say that there are some instances where he does kind of get like the crap kicked out of him. He's a bit bruised and battered come morning, but I never really felt like he was in too much danger. I felt like it was too much of a fun popcorn flick to go down that path. I felt like it was. You know, they'll tease it, but he'll always kind of come out on top somehow, some way, even if it's through a complete accident kind of thing. Like, it always kind of had that feel to it. So I didn't think it felt like as safe as like Home Alone or something would have. I like that they didn't go, you know, like too, you know, all right, he's a kid, so we can't be like, you know, too dangerous to him or something. It's like, no, like the people that are going after him are like full on like crazy psychos. Like
some more than others, depending on which character is. There's one or two that seem to have just a bloodlust. They just want to kill things. Whereas another couple, they feel like, they're just there because they want to do the thing that they're there for, and they're not necessarily, you know, they're not attracted to the chaos necessarily itself. They just want the end goal, the end product of their labor. So to wrap up the spoiler-free section, I'd say it's super fun. The gore's a lot of fun. The characters are likable. Even the villains you have a good time with. You know, there's the girl across the street that he has the actual sort of love interest, if you will. Like she's not in it much, but she's fine when she is. She's, you know, they have a likable chemistry whenever they're together. And it has that you know, I feel like not enough movies exist these days where kids are the main characters. I feel like that was a big thing in the 80s, like I said. And these days, whenever they try it, it tends to fall flat. But between this, your Stranger Things, also Netflix, fair enough, and, you know, It, and a few other things, like, I feel like we're back to a stage where we can have movies with kids as the lead characters, and it's not infuriating. You know, they're likable kids. And maybe that means they're a little bit unrealistic because they're not likable. That's okay to me. That's fine. They're movie kids. They're not real kids. It's fine. Real kids are awful, right?
Who would want to watch a movie about real kids?
Yeah, real kids are the worst. But, you know, in a movie, kids like this, especially when it's like, because the kid starts dropping references to all sorts of movies and stuff at one point, and I'm like, oh man, this kid's watching the right stuff. So no, I was kind of confused. Like I didn't know how to process the fact, like about how, see when I was about 20 minutes in, even before it got to the horror stuff, I was like, man, I'm digging this. It feels like an 80s movie about a kid. I didn't know how to process that I was enjoying a movie by McG this much. And then it kept going, it kept getting better, it kept doing wackier things, and I'm like, man, what's going on? Like, I'm really digging it. This is McG's masterpiece. This is like easily the best thing he's ever made.
Oh yeah.
Like in terms of movies, I mean, you could arguably some of his TV stuff, but that's a little bit different because he comes in and directs an episode of, a show that's been set up by someone else. So, no, I give this my utmost recommendation. If you like the types of movies that I've talked about, 80s movies with kids, if you like horror comedies, if you like this kind of thing, watch it.
Yeah, highly recommended. And like you mentioned earlier too, it's a very easy watch. It's only 90 minutes. It's on Netflix, so it's easy to find, and it's good, nice, fun horror comedy for the season.
So with that said, full spoilers for The Babysitter. So, I guess we'll start with the violence. I mean, this is the place to go with the kills. So the first guy, the sacrifice they've got over, because what they're doing is the ritual. They want to do a ritual so they can get stuff from Satan or whatever, and they need to sacrifice someone and then take the blood of the innocent. The kid being innocent. So that's actually the funny thing to me about this movie is that they actually just sneak into his room and like takes, because he's awake but he's pretending to be asleep still, and they take some of his blood. And I was like, you know what? They were never actually going to hurt him. Like if he just stayed asleep, they would never they would take some blood. No one would have been the wiser.
I especially love this scene though. The way it's set up in the beginning, how afraid of needles he is, and then like you said, it's not like a life-threatening scene, but just knowing how much he hates them made it like really tense.
Yeah.
And especially like when they're like trying to take the blood and like, oh, miss the vein, and it's like, oh no, like they have to keep going.
Yeah, and then after that as well, when he's like, he starts making the rope of his sheets to like out of the window because he's got nothing to climb down, and the camera keeps going back, and you can sort of tell eventually once it goes back behind him again, one of them's going to be standing there, and sure enough, at one point the babysitter is there. That was actually quite an effective little directed moment. But the first kill, so the sacrifice, the babysitter, we have this ridiculous scene of Truth or Dare where the guy dares her to kiss everyone in the room, and there's like 5 of them plus this sacrifice. So she goes around the circle doing various kissing or something similar to a kiss to each of them. Of course, her and the cheerleader have a makeout session for about 5 minutes, which at this point, before anything's gotten dark, our kid Cole, he's just watching from the stairs, being like, "Oh yeah, this is like best night of my life." That's his kind of thing.
Yeah, especially when he thinks that they might be having like an orgy or something. And you kind of go down and you see this, like, oh, maybe.
Which, to be fair, it's his friend across the street, Melanie. She's the one who's spurred this idea, and I bet they're going to have an orgy. Because the whole thing is that she's like, oh, you should stay up and see what she does after you go to sleep. Like, you should just stay up and find out what happens. And obviously she's watching from across the street, and she sees like 5 people going. It's like, oh, it's an orgy, because they're like texting each other. It's like, it's an orgy. So there's like tons of them. But so the guy gets his 2 knives in the top of his head, and then when they try to like take out the blood, what's the character's name? John, which I should remember because they named, like, everyone got a caption telling me what their name was.
Oh yeah.
But they're trying to take out the blood, and John just gets this face full of blood, which becomes a running joke because it happens again later on. One of the cops gets killed.
Yeah. That's actually maybe one of my like favorite jokes in the movie. At first it's like nothing's coming out and he's kind of like poking it like, oh, I think something's wrong with my side, and then it just like gushes out like a geyser and hits him. And then I love there's a little scene later with the kind of the cheerleader has like a little spot of blood on her dress, and she's like, oh my god, this is ruined, and then he's like just completely drenched. But the moment that the movie turned for me and I started feeling like some dread about what was going to happen was not so much right when they killed the guy, but when she's going to kiss him and he stands up and says, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know you guys. because you see B talking to him earlier in the movie, and I kind of does assume that they know each other, they're friends, or maybe even he's her boyfriend or something. But once he stands up, and I think the music even gets like a little dramatic, and then you kind of see him backing away, like something's wrong, and then that's why I kind of started feeling like, all right, something's gonna happen to this guy. He's gonna get killed. Like I said, like I didn't know how, like, I don't know if they were again weird monsters or something that were gonna feed on him or do something. But once he kind of starts walking away and everyone is like going towards him, that's when the gears kind of switched for me, and I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting into like the horror element of this.
Yeah, which then turns into the them coming up to get the blood and him Cole pretending to sleep. Then he gets caught, and I love that when he gets caught and they've got him tied up in a chair, and we see him get a pocket knife, like for protection, because he phones the police actually before he tries to escape, and he's like, oh, someone got killed in my house and blah 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 blah, and they're like, all right, whatever you do, hide. And he's like, I have to protect myself. And then you can just hear the voice on the phone, the operator going, no, that's a bad idea, don't do it. And he just hangs up. And he goes for a pocket knife, and I'm like, yeah, maybe listen to her. But he's tied up with like rope behind the chair in the living room, and they're all just kind of standing there asking him what he saw, because they don't know if he witnessed the murder yet. It's like, why are you up? What are you doing? And I try to question this. And he's like cutting the rope, and then I did not see this coming. This joke really caught me off guard. But the cheerleader's character's like, hey, do you not know there's a mirror behind you? We can see you cutting the rope. And then you just cut to the shot of like him looking around, and you can just see this mirror, and you can clearly see the hands cutting the rope. And then, to his credit, he just starts going faster. Like, if I can do it quick enough before they cut, and he's like, oh, that's so sweet. He's still cutting the rope.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that there's a lot of jokes like this that kind of subvert your expectations, and then I like that characters like call it out, and then it's not just, oh, a quick one and done thing. Like, they talk about it. They're like, he's still doing it. Can you believe it? And, that was another one that got me pretty good.
Yeah. And then, of course, that's when the scene where he's like, why is he shirtless? And John's like, that's your first question. Why is he shirtless? And he just keeps going on about it. Why is he shirtless?
Yeah, the dialogue was pretty. I was surprised. It was pretty like well paced. Like a lot of very nice back and forth kind of quippy dialogue that works really well.
Yeah, of course, the police arrive during this whole scene. And this is where we see that these people are just complete nut jobs, because they just immediately try and kill the police, and they do. Like, although Cheerleader gets shot in the boob, which also makes for a lot of hilarity later on about her deflated boob and how she can't do anything now. Like, who's going to want to squeeze my deflated boob? What?
Yeah. A lot of this stuff was funny. This is something I thought could probably have been dialed back a bit. Like, there's a lot of good lines and stuff, but after a while, I was like, okay, we get it. She's like a vain cheerleader type, and it was worried about her boob, but most of it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with there being too much, because she kind of disappears from the movie for a while, because then Cole runs away and like he deals with all the other teenagers one by one, and it's not until later we come back to her. So we actually, like, by the time she comes back, we've been like 30 minutes without her, that I was kind of like, oh, I'm happy to have her back and making more ditzy cheerleader jokes. So it was kind of like, I think it was well spaced in that sense. They didn't overdo, like, we have them all together for a while, and then after that they all kind of break up and we get them one by one. So it never overloaded you, I don't think, with any one of them for too long.
Yeah.
Because of course, Cop that, and obviously the blood spurts all over John again, which adds to that joke. John is the first one who dies at the teenagers, though, because he chases Cole up the stairs. And he actually yells the line, "This isn't Home Alone, get over here." And Cole pushes him over the stairs, and he lands on, like, his dad's got like an award.
Well, he trips on the like RC car.
Oh, you're right. But he just kind of push him though, right? Because he kind of pushes him before he trips.
I think so. Yeah, it's a combination of like getting pushed, and then they mentioned earlier in the movie, like, he has his toys all over the hallway and stuff. Yeah,
because I vividly remember how his hands been out like that, and he's got blood in his hands because he's been like forcing him away.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, he trips on the RC car and he flips over the banister, and he lands on, like, his dad's got like an award that's on the mantle, and he just goes through his neck. He lands on it on his neck, and it's just like this insanely violent death. And it's like, oh shit, this just escalated. And it's one of the funny things, actually. Obviously, you're not meant to take this movie too seriously. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be light. But if you actually think about it in a serious lens, you're like, first of all, how's he going to explain to the cops the next day that, all of these teenagers have died the way they have, and even if they believe, what's happened, because we know it's to be true, he's still going to be in therapy for the rest of his life.
Oh, sure.
This is the most traumatizing night of any kid's life. This is ridiculous. And I'm not criticizing it for that. It's just one of those things that's funny to think about. Obviously, it's not meant to be taken that seriously. It's a more of a slapsticky tone.
Kind of along those same lines. There was like a few like logic problems that you could probably complain about, but again, it's not that kind of movie that you really care about. Like, one thing I kept thinking was, how in the world does the entire neighborhood not hear what's going on? Like, there's gunshots, there's screaming, and but it's just one of those things where it's like, it's not that kind of movie. You don't care about it.
Actually, that was one of the things earlier on, before stuff went down, when it was just the kind of montage of like how B and C like are when she's babysitting, and we see them like they go swimming. Which, by the way, there's a point where I'm like, are you trying to turn the kid on? Because he's already in the swimming pool and she's like slow. I mean, it's slow motion, but she's taking off her clothes to get to the bikini, and I'm just like, are you actively trying to arouse this 12-year-old? Because it kind of feels like you are. There was just a lot of little things like that it was like, yeah, you're really amping this up. I was kind of worried at some point that there was going to be like a weird, like, I don't know, a scene between them, or that he was going to have like some over the top like super crush on him, and I'm glad that they didn't really go that route. No, it felt quite believable in the sense that there's a moment early on when after he gets, because one of the weird characters actually is that his friend Melanie, her dad's like this douchebag who loves his car, and he makes up an excuse not to give him a lift home because she's like, oh, can we give Cole a lift home, Dad? It's like, well, your parents are expecting you to take the bus, you should probably take the bus. And then he sort of revs the engine, and then as he does it, he kind of does thrusting motions as he revs. He's like, it's like the most over the top douchebag ever. It's great.
Yeah, it's very weird that he's like, I don't know, like almost trying to like impress like this kid or something, or like make him feel jealous of him. But it's like a 12-year-old kid. Like, why are you being such an asshole? And I think he even like says something like, I don't know, like NASCAR life bitch or something as he like drives off.
He does. And Melanie even just told us it's a midlife crisis car. He got divorced and he's bought this car to make himself feel better. Like, that's basically what this is. But so he gets bullied a little bit as well on the way home. I'll talk about the bully a little bit, but so B like picks him up and takes him home. She's like, oh, I'll see you tonight. It's almost like a play on the scene from Halloween. Remember how Jamie Lee Curtis runs into the kid she's going to babysit earlier on?
True.
And she's like, oh, I'll see you tonight. We'll have some fun. We'll do this. It's almost like the over-the-top version of that. And there's a moment where she just sort of leans to the back seat to like get his bag or something. And he like sort of like it's sort of she's sort of stretching, and she's kind of like the shirt gets pulled back a little bit, and he kind of notices the boob, and he's kind of like, oh, slow motion boob. And I like that scene because it felt very true to life. Just as someone who was once a 12-year-old boy and would notice things like that, it felt like such a true. This is kind of what it felt like at the time to notice these kind of things and be like, oh my god, like the boobs are sticking out a little bit. Like, it kind of felt like true to that.
Yeah, like it felt like they were actually like true friends, but at the same time, as a 12-year-old boy, you're not gonna not notice this very, hot, older, attractive woman. But yeah, it never felt like he was like he there are points where he does say that he loves her, but I always kind of took that more as like, oh, they're like close friends, like almost I mean, brother and sister kind of relationship.
Because that's kind of the thing. He kind of realizes that the girl across the street is his true love. By the end of the movie, he's like, oh yeah, that's the one I'm supposed to be with, not this hotter older girl who's clearly insane. But it plays with that stuff really well. And like I say, like, because we see them playing games and stuff. One of the thing I was going to mention actually during this montage that I thought was really over the top. I kind of love it for it, but I thought it was like kind of silly at the same time. Is they're out in the backyard watching a movie on like the wall. They've got a projector.
Oh yeah.
And they're watching a movie, but for some reason, like, there's so much mist on the ground. It's like super atmospheric, and I'm like, man, what's happening? This doesn't feel like a real street at all at this point. It feels like this is fabricated, which makes like a silly thing to say. But it felt so over the, like, why have we got all this atmosphere already? This is weird, but I like it, so I can't complain.
And the movie they're actually watching is Billy Jack, which the only reason why I know that is because the comic book shop I used to go to in college, um, I was friends with the owner, and he actually showed me that exact scene one time. He's like, because he was like a bit of an older guy. He's like, "Oh, you've never seen Billy Jack? Like, you got to watch this one scene. It is actually, like, you don't see it as well in the movie because they're kind of talking and posing in front of it and stuff. But it is a really cool scene if you just go and watch it.
That's cool. I was not familiar with the movie myself, but I thought it was a fun scene. And then they set up, because again, they set up a lot of things that they pay off later, like the fact that his dad watches Mad Men and he's not supposed to watch it, but he goes off to his room and watches the first episode, or maybe the first season. It seems like he's there all night, and then he references it later on. That whole intergalactic thing where it's basically a fantasy thing. Yeah, it's like
pick your top 5 intergalactic team or whatever.
Yeah, pick your crew if you're going to fight the big bad. Like, who's your crew from like any movie or TV show, comic book, whatever. And she gives hers earlier on in the movie, and it's like, it's like Kirk, Picard, and then Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum from Independence Day. I can't remember who the last one was, but like
Xenomorph.
Oh, Ripley.
Egg?
No, it was Ripley and the Egg. That was the last ones. Yeah, and then at the end of the movie, he gives his, because she never asked. He's like Adama, and I'm like, okay, he just referenced Battlestar Galactica. He gets points from me, and then he's like the Predator and Data, and then it was us. Like he was like, oh, me and you would be the 4th and 5th, and it was like, that's sweet. Yeah. And this is of course as she's like dying because he's just ran a car into her. More than that in a bit. But yeah, so I liked all the setup stuff, like this montage of them hanging, because it almost felt like it could have became like a different type of movie, like maybe like like the Babysitters Club or something like that, where the plot wasn't going to be a horror movie, it was going to be about like them dealing with some other crisis together. Like they could have been a team. Like it felt like it could have really went that way, which is why it almost hurt a little bit more when she turned out to be this evil bitch who was trying to sacrifice him.
Well, I like too that there's kind of a moment where she sorry, does want to team up with him kind of like towards the end, and I like that he doesn't give in. Like he realizes, as much as it hurts him, that you're evil, like I can't go with you.
You're Don Draper. I believe that was where he said that.
Yeah, and then I love her line. Did you just spoil Mad Men for me? He's like, it's been on for however many years. But yeah, and also kind of the idea. I think he says like, how many other kids have you done this to? And I like that idea that this might not have been her first time doing this thing. Like, she might have gone from town to town, and this is kind of what she does.
Yeah, which actually makes his, because he's a little bit extreme actually. He goes and takes the the douchebag dad's car that he loves, and he drives it. And again, it's set up at the start of the movie that he was too scared to even start learning to drive because his dad takes him out to like a, it's like an empty lot, and he's like, right, let's start driving. And he's too scared to even try. He starts giving out statistics about how many teenagers die in car crashes. He's too scared, but he gets in the car and he's like, he can barely control it. He's like skidding all over the place. But then he happens to drive up like a thing that's there, and it spins. It does like a sort of corkscrew. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. A corkscrew into the front of the house, and it hits her. And I'm like, that's a bit extreme. But then you realize, oh no, but like it's implied that she's been doing this to other kids, and that she's going to move to another town and do it to more kids. Yeah. So it's like he's actually saving people by doing this. He's saving more people who are going to be innocently killed, which is kind of cool. He becomes a hero.
And I love too that this is there's actually like a lot of setup in this scene because it's also the same thing that said he was going to do with his remote control cars. Because earlier he's trying to like fix a car with a knife, and he tells his dad if he hits it at the right angle on this ramp that it will like flip over. And then that's exactly what he ends up doing with the real life car when he goes through the I think it was like pieces of his treehouse or
again like set up and payoff. Like all these things that were set up in the start of the movie, every single one of them pays off in some way. As silly as some of them are, which is cool. It makes it feel like it really thought was put into it. You kind of appreciate it. So we've skipped over some of the character deaths. So you have Sonia, who's the sort of the stylish girl, the Asian girl who's like got the sort of gothy eyes, and she's all kind of extreme, and she's the one who maybe makes. I mean, her and Max, who's the topless Robbie Amell character, they're both the most bloodlusty ones, where they seem to enjoy the killing. They seem to want to kill people, and she's chasing him around. And they set up earlier on that there's the basement, like there's an access to the basement outside, and it's like full of spiders and rats, and like probably more spiders and rats that I think most houses typically have under their house.
The thing is, they're not just like spiders; they're like tarantulas.
that's so they're not just regular small spiders; they're these giant-looking things that. Man, like, honestly, if that's what's under your house, you're probably getting a team in, like a crack team of fumigators and exterminators to deal with the situation.
Call John Goodman. Get him in there.
That was a reference to arachnophobia. Very good, Tim. But she ends up crawling under after him, and he uses a firework, and he misses her. Like, 'cause she's like, haha, you missed me. But then he, like, sets it all off with,
some bug spray.
He actually traps her in there first, like, which almost makes the fact that he kills her a bit more vindictive, because he has her trapped. He sort of drills the access back into the side of the house, and she can't get out, and then she blows up anyway. But my favorite part of the whole my favorite part of the whole thing is after the explosion, you just hear her go, "I'm not dead yet, you mother," and there's a second explosion, and then she dies. So again, subverting expectations. Very funny.
Yeah. And it's not that it just gets her too. It also like throws him back, like like pretty high in the air and onto his back.
And I feel like this is the point where the neighbors really should be noticing what's going on.
Oh yeah. At this point, there's been gunshots, police sirens, people screaming, now an explosion.
Now, obviously, I knew that the girl across the street, Melanie, I knew she was going to come into it, like, oh, because he's got an ally across the street, like someone he can go to and help, and she ends up being like it's actually a really suspenseful scene when B has the shotgun and she's like chasing after them, and there's like a proper horror scene where she's going through Melanie's house and they're hiding around the other side of the stairs that kind of wind and go up, so there's sort of like a back to them, and they're kind of like moving around this podium, or not podium,
like a banister, or what do you call it? Column, something?
It's a column. But it's they're moving around this as B's going around with a shotgun, and it's all kind of quiet. It shows a bit more restraint than even what a lot of horror movies do now, where they have to have the loud noises. Not that this movie doesn't have loud noises at times. When the first guy gets killed and Cole sees it, it comes up "what the fuck" in giant letters on the screen. So it's not subtle. It's not a subtle movie by any means, but it's playing to its strengths.
I just remembered the reason why her dad's not home. They say he's like out with a prostitute. He's like, but why is his car still here? And he's like, well, she came and picked him up because he's like so desperate.
Oh god, yeah, we need more of the dad character. That's the one missed opportunity. Is I feel like he was missing. But that was the other thing when Cole gets dropped off home at the start of the movie. This is right after he's refused to give him a lift home. He's getting out of like B's car, and he looks across the street, and Melanie's there and she's waving. She's outside with her dad, and the dad's got like a hose. He's like watering the lawn, and he holds it to his crotch as if he's like peeing, and starts doing motions. And it's like, wow, why are you acting younger than the kids? Like, he's acting younger than the 12-year-old that's across the street. The actor sells it though. I'll give him that. The actor was selling.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it looks like a real creep. He has like a little like thin mustache. And, so I do like the scene that I thought was very nice. Like when they kind of escape from her and they're in that room and they get a little chance to talk and stuff, and they have a nice relationship, him and Melanie. Yeah,
because she gives him a kiss, and it's this first kiss moment, probably the first kiss in general for both of them, and then like he's like, okay, I'm gonna go be a hero now. You stay in here, and he goes outside, and as soon as he goes outside, he's like, hey, by the way, I'm really excited to be kissed, and she's like, yeah, me too. Next time we'll make out. Okay, and then he runs off. But it was just like, I liked that it wasn't super awkward after it happened. Like, you almost expect him to do this thing where the kids get really embarrassed. Oh, we just kissed, red faces. But instead, it was like, next time we'll make out. Okay, and then he runs off. So no, I think. I was just gonna say, I think what I like about the movie a lot is that it has a lot of energy. It always feels like it's moving forward, and it never feels like it slows down too much. And it always has this. And I think that's an example of that, where it didn't linger on the moment too much. It was just like, oh, okay, well, we'll have a little joke to wrap it up, and then we moved on.
Yeah, I also liked this thing that they address that always bugs me in movies a lot. But he leaves her, and then he closes the door, and he's like, "I'm so sorry to have to do this, but it's for your own good." And then he goes to lock the door, but he can't, and she's like, "The lock's on the inside, you idiot." And he's like, "Oh." It's like, yeah, like why would like it's not the outside of the house? Why would the lock be on the outside?
It makes no sense. It really does make no sense.
You see it in movies like all the time, though. But and it was nice, though. She's like, "Oh, it was nice you wanted to save me, though."
Yeah, it was sweet. That was really sweet what you were trying to do. But I think some movies they get away with it because it's like an actual lock with a key. So the key you can put in at either side. That works. Yeah. So the idea is the key's just kind of sticking out. They just kind of leave it in there. But yeah. Why would the lock? If it's just one of these locks that are built in, why would it be in that side of the door? That's stupid. But yeah, so obviously we've glossed over how because Max actually, his stalking sequence is probably the biggest in the movie, because he's chasing him around the outside of the house, and it's this moment, it's after the explosion where he sneaks up behind him, he comes walking through the mist. Again, really atmospheric street. I don't know what's going on here. Absurdly atmospheric. But he walks out of the mist, and he ends up, and again, earlier in the movie, B was giving Cole some advice. He's like, "Oh, if you're ever getting chased with a bully, you drop like a rock, and then you kick him in the dick." So what does he do here? He drops like a rock and then he kicks him in the dick, but he misses. He misses the dick, as Amell points out, and he's like, "My dick's pretty big." He's like, "No, it's not." He's like, "That's just hurtful," and he just grabs him by the neck. So really fun stuff. But then it all pauses because the bully shows up and he's egging the guy's house. He's egging Cole's house, and they walk out to the side, and it's this thing. Okay, let's forget the fact that I'm trying to kill you right now. Go and deal with this. Be a man. Go and beat up this bully. And of course, he tries to tell him what's happening as well as trying to stick up for himself. He tries like, "Oh, there's people in my house trying to kill me," and the bully just doesn't believe him and eggs him. And it's like this little, again, it's like showing you at this point in the movie he's not quite over it yet. I was actually half expecting at the end of the movie for him to like properly go over and deck the bully. Yeah, because he's had enough.
And what I really like is they do a lot of really good setup for things that pay off, but they also do stuff that doesn't really work out in their favor. Like you see him approaching the bully, and then he recites like the Billy Jack scene from the action movie they're watching a little earlier. So you think he's gonna do what he does and like kick him across the face, and then he just kind of lightly touches him, and the bully's like, "That's it," and then just like clobbers him.
It's the same with the kick in the dick. You think the kick in the dick's building up to him doing that, and then it fails. It doesn't work. So as much as it sets up and pays off a lot of things, it doesn't always pay them off with a successful moment. Like sometimes it pays them off with that, "No, you failed at this moment." So because of that, it works quite well. And by the way, I love that the bully's bike, he's got a name for it. It's called Cindy. You see that early on, and it's never mentioned again until the end when the parents arrive after in the aftermath, and they run over his bike, and you just hear the bully go, "Cindy!"
Then if maybe there's one little minor complaint is I do wish the bully got a little bit more of a comeuppance, but it's I mean, getting his bike run over definitely was something, and kind of losing the respect of his peers.
That was kind of the cherry on top, because before that his friends were kind of like saluting Cole, like they respected him now, and the bully's just like, like so they were kind of going for the more less of a physical comeuppance and more of a kind of like.
And I also like that we didn't really talk about his introduction, the bully's introduction scene earlier in the movie, but I like that he wasn't a, shut up and give me your lunch money kind of bully. He was like a person that I feel like I was more familiar with in high school, which is just this annoying guy that's like, "Hey loser, like guess what I did? I just had sex. Like I bet you're jealous and stuff." And I love Cole's just like, "I don't know, I don't care." He's like, "Oh yeah, like you'll like," and then what does he say, something like, "Oh, like why do you care if I believe you or not if you had sex?" He's like, "I don't," and then he like is trying to get him like, I don't know, this weird like, "Oh, you should be impressed by this dumb thing I did, even though it doesn't matter."
Yeah, because he says that why should I care? Why should you care if I believe you? He's like, "I don't," and then 10 seconds later he's like, "I changed my mind." So it's I think it's a chart. Obviously the movie ends with the parents show up in the aftermath, after the car, after everything else. Police and I chuckled a little bit as the emergency services were, because they arrive again because Melanie's phoned the police. She's phoned again whilst he's dealing with the babysitter. But I chuckled a little bit that the police, the ambulance, and the fire engine all arrive at the exact same time.
Yeah,
they all just kind of drive in at the same time. Oh, that was convenient timing. Every single one of them there. But anyway,
Yeah.
the parents arrive, they come and hug him, and then he's just sort of like, he walks away calmly and says, I don't need a babysitter anymore. And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a nice side, but I like that it is kind of this weird, demented coming of age story. But it's always super fun. The characters are all very likable. The violence is good. The humor's typically on point. Like, there was very few jokes that didn't land for me. Most of them were cracking me up.
Yeah. Did you see? I think there was maybe like a mid-credit scene.
I did, yeah. I saw the mid-credit scene.
That was I probably could have done with that. Like, we didn't really need the one last little jump scare. Like,
nah, especially since it wasn't really that movie up until that point.
Yeah, and like I mean, who knows if she's been doing other like satanic stuff before, but I never got the sense that she would be someone that could survive a car landing on top of her.
I think it's just a fun little, like, oh, she could be back for a sequel.
Yeah.
Like, if we wanted to. But, you know, I'd be fine with that idea. The scene itself isn't particularly great. It's just her kind of jumping at the camera more than anything else. But, like, I'd be down. Like, see if we, like, get a sequel where it's, like, a few years later, and now Cole's a babysitter for someone, and then this, you know, and then B shows up for revenge, and he has to protect the kid. Like, or maybe not Cole, maybe it's Melanie, and he's the one who goes over to the house to, like, be with Melanie. You know, they're like, oh, because now they're like 16, 17, but then the babysitter shows up for vengeance. That's the sequel.
Something like that. Yeah.
The Babysitter 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, trying to think if there's anything we missed. There's a lot of nice, like, little jokes.
Oh yeah, it's impossible for us to hit them all. There's so many little things throughout that were really cracking me up. And even like we mentioned how set up and payoff, but it wasn't always a success. Like at the start of the movie, when he's using the knife for the RC car, and then the dad's like, "That's dangerous. I'm going to put that in the dishwasher." So you see him put it in the dishwasher, and then he remembers that when he's fighting it, because when he goes back in, the cheerleader's back up, and they end up having this fight. He goes for the knife in the dishwasher and it's not there, and then it cuts to another flashback which we've not seen, and it's like the dad's getting a hand job. Like, it's just this really casual hand job. They're both reading things. Like, he's watching TV and the wife's just reading like her book, but she's giving him a hand job at the same time. It's like, by the way, were you the idiot that put the knife in the dishwasher? And he's like, yeah, why? Oh, it doesn't go there, it goes in the chopping block. And then like then it's on the side with the cheerleader and she picks it up, and it's like, it was just a fun little, you know, misdirect. Which, by the way, I really enjoyed the little debate in the middle of it, because she's tackling him, and to get her away, he punches her in the wound and the boob, when she gets shot, and then she immediately goes, "Oh, how dare you! That's like, how dare you touch my boob, you little pervert!" It's like, you were attacking me, you were trying to kill me. It's like, you just wanted to feel the boob.
I think he says like, "Oh, don't make me feel ashamed for defending myself," or something like that.
It was a really nice little. They
actually had like a surprisingly nice like little scene together, and then I like that he was like, she was like, "Oh, now I'll never get to do what I want to do." He's like, "What did you want to be?" And she's like, "A journalist," which I wasn't expecting her to say.
Especially since like, I'm pretty sure a slightly wounded boob won't hinder you in that field too much.
But like, especially like, she's been running around in this cheerleader outfit. She's kind of been very vain and vapid the whole entire movie. You kind of expect her to have this like ditzy career goal, and then she's like, "No, journalist." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And then he actually kind of compliments her, and she sees she's kind of like, "Oh, really? Like, you think I could still do this?" Like, "Oh, you're sweet."
And then she flips out and just tries to kill him anyway. Yeah, that's basically what happens. Yeah, no, I think if I want to impart a final word on this, is that it has energy. Like, from the very moment it started, it felt like it kept moving. It kept doing the freeze frames and telling us things. I immediately got the relationship between Cole and B, and that was there really strong before things went sideways, almost to the point where you were hoping that things wouldn't go sideways and it would just be like a fun babysitter adventure movie where they have to deal with something else.
Yeah.
But then again, that's kind of what the sequel could be, is that the kid and him and Melanie could like fight back against her revenge, if they even wanted to. I don't think it needs a sequel. I think it's perfectly self-contained. You don't have to do anything else, but not knowing what movies are like and they want sequels these days, that's what I would do with the sequel if they wanted to do one. But with that said, I think we should get to ratings. So Tim, what would you give The Babysitter out of 10?
I feel like a lot of the last couple of movies we've done, it's always kind of started off with like, "Oh, this was a hard one to rate." but it's nice with this one. This is actually pretty easy for me. I think I'm gonna give it a solid 8. I liked it a lot. Very funny. Still, worked though as a horror movie. There's lots of tension and gore and some great deaths.
Yeah, there's good gore. There's some good horror tropes, but I think there's one or two scenes, particularly when Bee's hunting them with a shotgun. There's actually a pretty decent little suspense scene. Like, I mean, I wasn't like super tense, but it worked. Like there wasn't anything about it that felt like they were cheating or whatever. No, this was a proper shot scene where she's chasing them and they're having to be quiet, and it was working.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of stuff like that, and like when Max is chasing him, and like or he's hiding under the blanket under the crawl space. Like those are really good. Again, it's comedic movie and stuff, so there's funniness to it, but yeah, it's not like there's any reason why you couldn't consider this a horror movie. And I mean, really, I think my only complaint is that some of the like over the top stylized stuff, like I like most of it, but maybe could have dialed it back just as a smidge every now and again. But it really doesn't hinder the enjoyment that much.
actually, one weird. This is very minor, but the stylized things. When they're given their intergalactic team lists, they both have like on-screen graphics for it, and I thought that was fine because it was kind of like given as a list as they were saying them. I thought that was okay. But as she gives hers, it's just a list of text. Like, number one, it's the name. Number two, the other name. When it's him at the end of the movie, we get images. Like, there's like a little image of the person he's talking about. And I thought, why are they different? That kind of, because I was expecting it to come back up again, but I was really surprised when it did it in a different way. We actually seen a Predator, we seen a Dama, and I thought, that's strange. And honestly, it just makes me think that they couldn't get the rights to one of the images for the first list, so they just made the entire list be text. And I'm like, well, make it match. I feel weird that you did the images for the second one, but not the first one. But whatever.
Also,
small thing.
Yeah, I also didn't like that. During that first scene, they were cooking a pizza, but you never actually got to see what the pizza looked like.
Oh, that's just a Tim complaint. No one else cares. No one else cares about that. But Tim, of course.
I think a lot of people care. The pizza community at large had that complaint.
Everyone eats pizza, Tim. We're all the pizza community.
Not my community. Not the super secret elite pizza enthusiasts.
Who's your king, Papa John?
No, I was gonna say the Noid, but I mean we're trying to avoid him.
The Domino,
the Ninja Turtles. That's
the Ninja Turtles. Okay, right, very good. All right, so my rating, I suppose we didn't get to that. I think I agree with an 8. Yeah. I think I'm solid 8 out of 10 for this for me as well. I had a blast. So, full recommendation points. I've given a McG movie an 8. I didn't see that coming, but I'm glad to give it a try, and I had a blast. So.
And again, it's nice that this just kind of came out of nowhere. Like,
and actually, because I obviously I'm a sad guy who likes to keep track of like my ranking of the movies I've seen this year. Not just horror, just in general. And like this is in my top 10 movies of the year. It may not stay there. By the time we get some more, the Oscar kind of movies coming out and stuff like that. But like right now, it's in my top 10. Like it's that good. It's up there. Like I like this more than some other stuff that other people liked a lot. But I don't know. That this spoke to me in a way that some other movies didn't. I had a blast. So that's The Babysitter. By all means, check it out. Obviously, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. Especially now that YouTube have decided that horror movie reviews are unsuitable for advertising. So we're getting no money from there. So, no pressure, of course. But if you want to go over and check out what we get over there, by all means, do so. Otherwise, obviously it's October. We've been doing lots of horror movie videos. Tim, is there any of the ones we've done so far for the month October that you would like to say, check out that one, that review, not the movie, that review? You did this last time and you're like, oh, that movie was good. I'm like, no, but you're recommending the review, the discussion.
I don't know. We've done so many, I can't even remember. They've all been pretty fun though. Slumber Party Massacre 2 was a good review.
That's a good pick. Well, that
was a good one.
Yeah, pick that.
And that's a one where like, the plot's not super important. So if you haven't seen it, but you do want, just to watch a review, that I think that's an entertaining one.
Yeah, I'll recommend our top 100 videos that we've got the first part up, 100 through 76. Part 2, which is 75 to 51, will be up on Tuesday, so you can look forward to that. Obviously, the final part will be on Halloween itself, so that's the thing we're doing this month.
Those are really fun discussions. I think talk more about this off mic, but I don't know, it could be fun maybe to have more of these little list videos kind of go up. Maybe not just around Halloween. Maybe think of other stuff throughout the year.
Tim's got an itch. Or we save the ideas for next, because we've established this is something we do in October. I feel like next October we have to have a thing that's not just movie reviews like this that we do. But yeah, we'll talk about that off mic. We'll discuss ideas and what crazy concoctions Tim comes up with. But so those are fun. It's fun to see where we place things and then making fun of each other for having stupid picks. Tim more so than me has having stupid picks, might I add.
I don't feel that.
Leprechaun, the boy, you have made some funny choices, Sonny Jim. Anyway, so that has been the Babysitter, which we enjoyed a lot. So that's great. So thank you very much again for watching once again, and that is us. So keep watching scary movies. We will see you next time. Goodbye.